I'm encouraged that we are preparing ourselves for as we look at Washington, D.C. and taking back power in this country. What I'm encouraged about is the young people that the Leadership Institute touches. We keep hearing that young people in this country are left. Young people in this country are secular. Young people in this country don't want to hear about traditional values. And, you know, as Dan talked about my personal transition, there's a continuum of my story, as it does every day because I'm still here. But one thing that I want to mention this morning, in particular about the young people, my daughter, my oldest daughter, married at 21 years old, and she married a 23-year-old, and today they have my little 3-year-old grandson. And one of the things that the bishop said at her wedding, we were sitting there in an un-air-conditioned church in Southern California, where my home is, even though I also stay here in Washington, D.C., told one of my supporters, I feel like I moved from Sodom to Gomorrah. And he said, don't give Gomorrah such a bad name. I said, you know, Washington is an interesting place, but my home is still in Southern California, and so this is 6 years ago or so, she married, and the bishop said, you know, why would young people come in a church and on a hot day like today in an un-air-conditioned place and exchange ancient words that are rarely heard in society? He said maybe they're trying to recover something their grandparents knew. And I'm telling you that story because I think that us baby boomers, have allowed the secular left to define us as having skipped a generation of understanding traditional values, limited government, free market economics, and strong defense. And so when we think about who we are as conservatives and what it is that we should tell the American people about who we are as conservatives, the Joe, the Jamal, and the Juan Jose, they need to recognize the significance of traditional values of a limited government, of free enterprise, and of strong national defense. So when we talk about young folks coming in and training them up in our agenda, it's important that we do not compromise the values that we say we support. You know, I think about my own personal journey into the conservative movement, if you will. As was mentioned, I did live a very aggressive life. I lived the lie of the left. I experienced what they say about freedom, sexual freedom. I was in and out of their abortion clinics over and over again. In fact, it had become birth control for me. It wasn't until after the 4th time that I went into one of their so-called safe, legal, rare clinics that I had a gut instinct way down deep inside that there has to be something wrong with killing your offspring. And I ended up having that next child, the one I just described to you, that actually married very young. She reminded me when she was getting married that, Mom, I'm not like you, because I was so proud of the fact that she's marrying young and preparing her life on a good, solid foundation. Once you can control your sexual impulses, as I tell people in the inner cities and broken communities all of the time, you have actually gotten to the place where you understand the first principle of breaking the cycle of poverty, when you learn how to self-govern. Well, I didn't know these things, and so I just lived aggressively. I lived in the drug life and the criminal life. And so once God found me in that little black hole and got me up and shook me together, and I started on this new journey and began to process new information about how to live, I stumbled into the conservative movement. I was getting pretty fat, actually, just kind of sitting in my church, as many of us do sometimes, and just reading the scriptures, and my little life was beginning to work because the conservative principles that this country was built on work very effectively in individuals' lives. This is the reason we have to limit the role of government, so that people will take upon themselves the first step to wholeness, and that is self-government, to recognize that we have a moral obligation to be responsible with the choices that we make. I needed to self-govern, become responsible with the choices that I was making. And so after being able to do that in my own personal life, it began to work. Life works when you put things in order. And I put that particular part of my life in order and began then this journey toward what we call today the conservative movement.